used to be foster parents. I would have to say the 6.5 years we did that, it changed our lives in the most positive ways.
I was adopted when I was 5, and it just didn't work out well, and so I entered into the foster care system when I was 15, and I was in a lot of different placements, so I had multiple different experiences with foster homes and group homes and things like that.
We suffer so they don't have to. So when people say I couldn't do it because it hurts, well, it should hurt. If you're doing it right, it should hurt. Love those babies, love those children, love those kids who are hard to love.
The only reason our experience was so successful is we had 20 plus people who would randomly show up or step up and ask what we needed or show up with a meal or just encourage me or encourage the kids.
It's a privilege for us to be her mommy and daddy, but it's also a tragedy that we even have to be. And I really hate that this is her story, honestly.
We need homes. These kids need a safe place to be. They need people who love them and are going to wrap around them.
It's like we just try to love on these families to give them care and support.
Not having what it takes does not disqualify us from being used by God. As a matter of fact, I think in the kingdom of God, it's one of the things that qualifies us the most.
Again, I just want to welcome you all to this evening. My name is Justin. I am the director of the Open Homes Initiative. And as you just heard from the video, our goal is to recruit and retain foster families. And so most of the stuff that you're going to hear tonight is geared towards that end, is geared towards stories and just information on what it looks like to be a part of the foster system, to be part of kinship, to be a part of adoptive care, to essentially care for our young neighbors that in some way, shape, form, or fashion cannot care for themselves. And so we run monthly support groups to just support one another. One of my favorite statistics, and you can see a bunch, we'll have some other ones tonight. One of my favorite statistics to quote is that 50% of foster families get out of fostering after their first placement or within the first year. But that number jumps to 90% stay in after 2 years if they're surrounded by a church or a support group. And so one of the beautiful things about especially these couple tables over here is we've been doing support group together for 2+ years now, and these families are still in the game, still caring and loving on kids. Some of them have taken in, 40-something kids now? Are y'all up to 40? No, 30s? You're in the 30s? Somewhere in that. They've taken in a bunch. If y'all don't know, my wife and I are foster parents as well. We've had 15 kiddos come through the home. We're currently loving on and serving two under 3. So we've had 3 bio daughters that are, 2 of them are here tonight. They're teenagers now. And all of a sudden, a couple weeks ago, we went back into caring for 2 under 3, and it's been a culture shift for us, but it's also brought, I think my oldest daughter described it the first week as, the house is loud. And it is, but it's also, it's a lot more activity, lots of smiles, lots of laughs, lots of crying, lots of diapers. But when you look at the kids' face, it is well worth it, the difference that we're getting to make in their lives. Thank you all. One of the things you'll notice is Todd mentioned earlier that he fostered and adopted, and he's got some neat stories, as so many of you do. And that's what we're trying to do tonight, is share the stories, to encourage and to share stories and hopefully get some more people involved. I've got one more set of individuals that I want to recognize. If you are a service provider to the foster system, would you stand up? CPAs, CPS, etc., Rainbow Room, WIT program, Foster Closet, Kinship, San Angelo Family Network, all of those, One Accord. There's so many. Thank you all for what you do. Thank you all. Hi, Sky. I didn't say hi, Sky. There's a bunch here. Thank you all so much for what you do. The question that I have is, who is more likely to experience PTSD? Who is more likely to experience PTSD? A child exiting the foster system or in the foster system, or a war veteran returning home? Crazily enough, you can see a child in foster care is twice as likely to develop PTSD than a war veteran that actually saw combat. It's insane what goes on for some of these kids and the experiences that they've had. I've got one other kind of quick question. It's this: how many beds right now do you think it would take in San Angelo? How many beds would it take for us to open in San Angelo for us to keep every kid that comes into the system here today? It's not too many, just 41. Right? Just 41. We've got 41 beds to go. We've got 100,000 people in this city. We've got over 100 churches. If we could open 100 beds, the kids that get pulled in San Angelo could stay in San Angelo. Right now, over 60% go somewhere else. Over 70% go outside of our region if they're pulled from Region 9, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But 41. The goal is not that unattainable. The question is, how do we get the word out, and who can actually step up? But there's something that we as Open Homes are trying to do. We're starting an initiative. I like the word. It's hard to spell, by the way. If you try to look up the website, I apologize for that. It wasn't the best on that front. But I love the idea of initiative. One of the things that we're doing is we're trying to put names and faces to these numbers and statistics. Right, that's one of the goals. And so we've recently started the first pilot episode. Episode 0 came out on Tuesday, but we're starting a podcast to share some of these stories. So we've got an intro video for you to watch. All right, are we good to go? We got to figure this thing out.
It gets so awkward.
It is awkward.
The Lord was weaving a story. I was holding her and I go, and we have 5 bio kids, and
Right.
4 at the time. And I said, I love her more than our other kids. I love her the most of any human being ever. So don't tell them I said that.
We won't. We'll cut this part out.
I do love you guys. I never want to let you go.
Oh, wow.
Never gonna let you go.
Never have to.
We are working towards a day when there will no longer be a list of children waiting for a family, but a list of families ready for children.
Mm-hmm. All of the stories that hopefully we share on this podcast will be local families just like us who are walking or have walked this journey. I think it helps our neighbors to just go, oh wow, they're just everyday people like us. And if everyday people like us next door can do this, I can too. It's real and it is hard, but it is so good and it's so worth it.
And so excited to hear from y'all. Sonora, take it away.
All right, I'm excited. Are y'all excited? Let's do it. The energy is high tonight. I love it. Are y'all having fun so far? Yes, I love it. I love it. Well, we are super excited to have everybody here with us tonight, and like you said, we're gonna share some stories, and hopefully they're gonna hit you right in the feels. So, Kirsten, I want to start with you. You actually went through the foster care system. So, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how that shaped your life?
Yeah, so I experienced the foster care system as an older youth. I was adopted when I was 5, and it just didn't work out well, and so I entered into the foster care system when I was 15, and I was in a lot of different placements, so I had multiple different experiences with foster homes and, group homes and things like that. But just like overall, my experience being a foster youth, it gave me the passions that I have today. And so what I mean by that is I'm currently a senior pursuing my bachelor's in social work. And I don't necessarily, aspire to be a caseworker necessarily, but just to work closely with young people in the system. And so, excuse me, sorry. It wasn't an easy experience, being a foster youth, but like I said, it built a lot of resilience in me, and it made me, want to do what I do now. So
yeah, you mentioned you're actually an advocate.
Yeah, I'm a youth advocate. I'm on the Texas Emerging Leaders Board with T-Noise, this Texas Network of Youth Services, and so I just I use my experience to try to help encourage people that work with youth in the foster care system to hear us as young people and not just another number, and hear our story and hear our dreams and things like that. So yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Can we give her a round of applause? That's fantastic. That is amazing. So we were also talking a little bit earlier about some of those relationships that you had that really kind of shaped all of that, and it ended better.
Yeah, it did. Overall, honestly, there was a lot of different adults. Teachers were a big one for me. Just the support that they provided me through my career, as like school journey and whatnot. But like just the support and encouragement that they gave me, being able to talk to them and whatnot. But another really big relationship for me was my very last set of foster, parents. I don't consider them parents because I was 17 when I came into their home and they were 26 and 27. So they were more just like big brother, big sister, and it was like the best experience for me, honestly. And they were like very, very supportive. They did not push me into the church, but they were Christian, and they, showed me into what the church is, and, wrapped me in their love, and, guided me towards, being who I am today, the Christian that I am today. Yeah.
That's quite a journey. That is amazing. Now, speaking of journeys, Amy, I want to go to you. Tell us a little bit about CASA, because you're a CASA volunteer. So tell us a little bit about what you do and what led you to do that.
Okay, we have 3 girls, and I've always loved working with kids and serving in any way I can, volunteering or whatever. And if I remember correctly, I saw a bunch of opportunities pop up online about training, and I had a friend at the time who was a volunteer, and I don't remember who called who, but we had a conversation about it, and she encouraged me to go ahead with the training and thought there was one coming up, which there was. And so, I went through the training. I immediately felt like it was a good fit for me to advocate and serve in that role, and so I went ahead and started with that, and I loved it. I've loved it ever since, and it's something I've just grown to have a passion for.
Wow. So for those who may not know, it's court-appointed special advocate is what CASA stands for. So tell us a little bit about the types of things that you do as a volunteer.
Oh, gosh. Okay, well, I love CASA because I do feel like it provides a really unique role in a child's story and in their case. A CASA advocates for their best interest in court, but what that entails is lots of relationships, lots of investigation, lots of even mentoring. It can look very different for each case and for each CASA volunteer, but I think it's so unique and so individualized because you get to be involved in their education, you get to be involved in doctor's appointments if you need to, or if it's an older teen, you can have a conversation about what are you feeling, what do you want from this? If it's a younger child, of course, that's different. I've worked with babies all the way up to 18. So it's all very, very different and unique, and you're constantly learning, but you have a great opportunity to serve them in a capacity that I think is very unique to CASA because of the low caseload. You work with, I would say most CASA volunteers carry 1 to maybe 4 cases at a time. So it just provides a great opportunity for you to bond with them and the families and kind of walk with them through hopefully the end of their case. It could be a year, it could be a couple of years, it could be shorter. Everything looks different for each case. But
wow, so I'm sure that kind of changed your perspective on how you see, everything in the community.
Yes. I had no idea. This was an arena that was completely new to me, and I just was overwhelmed with the need, and have just really grown to understand that we have a community that is prepped and ready to serve these kids, and there's a lot of really positive new changes that are going on constantly that I think are going to wrap around these kids in a really positive way. But we have to have homes before we can even implement the services that are there, the people that are willing to help. There's a lot of that, and there's a lot of positive change, but we need homes. These kids need a safe place to be. They need people who love them and are going to wrap around them. And so that being said, the faith community is another positive aspect that can be there for them. So we hope to grow in that aspect as well.
Wow, most definitely. Now, Yvonne, going to you now. So you have seen that need firsthand through being a caseworker and now an adoptive mom. So kind of walk us through that journey for you.
Yes, I was just joking, and I said it feels like the Twilight Zone because I'm in a very different space walking into this room. But I did case management. I would license home. I worked in that for a little over a decade, and I loved it. I was privileged in the fact that I was single, no kids, so I had the flexibility to respond to crisis or just to be available for families when they needed me, and I enjoyed being able to problem solve with them. And we would have kids for short periods of time, sometimes one night, sometimes for years. And so I was able to see success stories and heartbreaking, devastating stories. And then I'd see the story continue. And so for some reason, these kiddos, they actually left San Angelo altogether. And we were hopeful that it was going to be forever, and that they were going to have this happily ever after like we all dream of for our kiddos. And it didn't work out 5 months later. So they were a month short of permanency. And the whole 5 months, I couldn't stop thinking about whether or not they were okay, because they were so far from us. And San Angelo had just wrapped their arms around these kiddos, and I just really felt like they belonged here. And I mourned with the foster parents, I mourned with my agency, I mourned with the people that babysat them, and we were finally getting to a place where we had accepted that, and these kiddos needed a home again. Mm-hmm. And so the reason I'm here is because we had so many families step up and provide what these kids needed, and it allowed me the opportunity to realize, like, we all just love them, and that's really, what they needed. They wanted to be here, and I had another job opportunity come up that I couldn't say no to, and everything just kept falling into place. Mm-hmm. And so every excuse that I would think, like, I shouldn't take these kids, it's not okay, I'm a single parent, every excuse would go away because things would click into place miraculously, and so all the excuses disappeared and they became my kids.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, yeah, that deserves a round of applause. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, that is fabulous. So you seeing both sides of this, being a caseworker and now a mom, what advice would you give maybe to anyone wanting to get involved that, would really help these kids thrive?
I think community is exactly what everybody needs. We talk a lot about that, but seeing Open Homes Initiative, seeing my own experience, the only reason our experience was so successful is because we had 20 plus people who would randomly show up or step up and ask what we needed or show up with a meal, or just encourage me or encourage the kids and mediate between us when things were hard. And so I just think that community piece is so important. And when I see placements that have failed, it's because they felt lonely and they felt alone in this very difficult journey, or the kids felt alone, and so it caused them to act out. And so the connectedness in the community has really made a difference. And really keeping sibling groups together, I've been able to see these boys thrive. Everybody thinks I'm crazy, including myself, for taking 4 kids all at once. But they needed to be together. They needed each other, and it's been amazing just to see how they push each other to be better human beings. So I just really love them, and I think the fact that they're together is why we were able to successfully complete their adoption. So.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is amazing. Well, speaking of amazing human beings, we got Pastor Don over here. So you're a pastor, you're a father, you have that leadership role. What led you to want to get involved with the foster care system?
My wife. Yeah.
had some medical issues and couldn't have children, and went to a fertility doctor and had our first child, and it worked really well. So we had 3 children in 3 years and 3 days. All the women are kind of ooh. So we were very young and decided we couldn't have any more children or shouldn't have any more children. And so as fast as they came, they left. And so we were empty nest for 2 or 3 years, and had one of my church members, family moved off. She went one day to Midland High School, and she said, can I come back to Sonora and go my senior year? And so that really kind of started making us think we could do this. We had a 4-bedroom home, and no kids. And I was doing a sermon series through the book of James, and in chapter 1, verse 27, talks about that true religion, undefiled, is to care for widows and orphans. And during that sermon, I just talked about the number of kids in the state of Texas who were eligible for adoption, and how the church has abdicated its responsibility to the government. And as a preacher, you just kind of do your thing. But afterwards, my wife really felt conviction that we should be part of the answer. And there was 4 other families in our church that also did that. So we went through, they called it pride training back then with CPS before the local agencies took over. And out of that, there was something like 12 children that ended up being adopted in homes as well. So we've had 31 foster kids and adopted 2 of them over the last 16 years. Some very beautiful stories, some very sad stories. And yet, each one of them have had an effect on my family. I have a granddaughter that's been all her life has only known us as grandparents who have foster kids, and she goes to school with one of Yvonne's kids. And she knew that before they even became Yvonne's kids, that because of her sensitivity toward the foster kids in our home, she saw him and acknowledged him and talked to him where she wouldn't have done that before. And so I think that has had a real effect. My daughter, my oldest daughter, has adopted 3 children as well. So I've got 3 of my 6 grandchildren are adopted as well. So that kind of catalyst of the timing of God, and then just of the voice of God speaking to my wife that we can do this. And I'll be honest with you, I've been a pastor all of my adult life, but I honestly think I do more for the kingdom of God by holding one of his children in my arms than I do preaching the gospel some Sundays. So that has made a big difference in my life, to say that I've been adopted in Ephesians 1, that I belong to him when I really didn't belong to him, but he chose to love me.
Oh my goodness. That's beautiful. So, you mentioned, the good times, the hard times. What has that done, again, for your heart? Like, what has that spoken to you?
The good part is seeing the effect of one person doing something right. I'm a 1 talent guy, not a 5 talent, not a 10 talent. I'm just a 1 talent guy. I just love people.
Yeah.
And it's opened up other people. I think our churches, church in Sonora and church in Sterling City, where people were very hesitant at first, but I told them that was a condition of me coming, is I will foster. And they said yes, would open our arms and our hearts to them. And the first time some left, it was really hard on my friends, my church family, and our biological family as well. And we've kind of had a discussion that what we think we should be doing is, people say all the time, I couldn't do that. I just want to keep them forever. Or it'd break my heart. And it's like, well, it breaks our heart. Every time our hearts are broken. We placed our last foster child in our home on Friday. So we didn't have a baby in our arms this weekend. And for the first time in 16 years, we didn't have a baby to get to sleep. And so what we try to say is, it's intentional suffering. We suffer so they don't have to. We become the body of Christ who takes the suffering of others on us. So when people say, I couldn't do it because it hurts, well, it should hurt. If you're doing it right, it should hurt. Love those babies, love those children, love those kids who are hard to love, because that's what Christ would do. And the watching world is not really impressed with my sermons. But they are impressed when they see us, holding multiracial children over the years. And it's like, how does this your baby? And it's like, we chose them, we chose them. So I think that for me, it has made me probably simplify my Christian faith. And then it becomes something that people see that I try to practice what I preach. And so it helps other people to give Christianity a second look, a second thought, that if we would love children the way Christ loved children, that maybe there's something to this Jesus.
Pastor Don is preaching today, isn't he? Oh, I love that, guys. Okay, so this is kind of the final question. It's going to be a really tough one. If you could tell everyone here one thing that you just want them to walk away with, you want them to take away from this evening, what would that be? Jump in, whoever's ready. I told you it was a tough one. You want to go?
I think it's important for you to look around. These are the people that are going to be supportive of you. These are the people that if you have ever thought about being a foster parent or an adoptive parent, or even just part of the community, look around. Respite. We need respite. But yes, look around this room, and these are your number one people. This is your village, and don't take that for granted. Really reach out and lean on each other, because throughout all the hurt and all the devastation, there's also love and joy and connectedness, and it's worth it. So.
Good word.
I would say that if you're thinking about getting into fostering of any kind, to remember that, it may be hard, but it's also hard to be a foster kid. And so, like Pastor Don here said, if you really embrace those children, and all of those children, the babies, the middle schoolers, the high schoolers, the ones who are, the most respectful, and the ones who are going to push your buttons and push your boundaries, just really embrace all of them, because as a foster kid, I can tell you that means so much, and that's going to have a really big impact on their lives, no matter if you are there for them for a few days or you adopt them. Just really loving and supporting those kids is going to be the most important thing to do.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. I mentioned respite care as an alternative where people aren't sure. It takes almost the same amount of work to get ready to be a respite worker as it does a foster parent. But if in that process you realize, hey, I can do this, it's a good way to step your toe into the pool and say, let me try. There's a lot of foster parents who quit fostering because they just get burned out. They just don't have time. We had a phone call, can we do respite for 2 children? And since we only had 1 baby at the time, we said, sure. It was because they had planned a cruise for 2 years for their anniversary. And then at the last moment, the people who were going to do respite got COVID. And so they were going to bring them all the way from Tyler, Texas to West Texas for us to watch them. And finally, they just said, it's just too hard. There was no respite in that area besides that one family to do the week long that they needed. And it broke my heart that family had to cancel an anniversary cruise that I know they looked forward to it, and that they couldn't do it. And so I just simply say, you can do something. You can't do everything, but you can do something. And I agree with what you said, Kirsten, that I don't know when we decided that we don't want to do hard things. It's hard, but it's worthwhile. I've never said, I wish we hadn't done that. There's never been a time. I've got kids who are now teenagers who find me on Facebook and message me, do you remember me? It's like, how could I forget, and start telling stories, and they're so excited, that I had one little boy and his sister 3 years because the court system just kind of messed up over and over, and he just wanted to know if I remembered him, So I started telling Ricky stories, and he loved it. He called me and he cried on the phone, and it was just that touching that one life matters. It matters to God, and it will make a difference in your life. I pray that you would consider being a foster parent. And if you can't, not sure, go ahead and go through the classes to become a respite provider. And you do two things. You love those children, you love those other people, and you never know what the Lord's going to ask you to do after you do that for a little while.
Definitely.
I would agree with that. Respite is something I think we're going to discuss a little more at church as well to try to create that for some of the families. I would also agree with you can't do everything, but you can do something. I didn't know what I was getting into when I started CASA, but I knew that I love kids. I recently took a teenager, and it was one of my first. I had several younger ones in various ages, but this one was an older one, and she got real mad at me one day because we had a very frank conversation on the phone, and we had lots of deep conversations, and she called me all the time. But when I answered and she called back the second day, she said, "You answered." And I said, "Yeah, I answered." And she goes, "You're not mad?" And I said, "No, I'm not mad. We can move on. What's wrong?" And she goes, "Well, but I hung up on you." And I said, that's okay. I've been hung up on before, and it probably won't be the last time anybody ever hung up on me either. But she spent several minutes talking about how she did not think someone would pick up the phone because she got upset and she hung up, and and I said, "It's okay. Everybody gets mad. That you are entitled to your feelings, and it's okay." And she's like, "Thank you for answering the phone." And so I would like to share that you don't know the impact you're going to have or what one little moment might be that you have with these kids. And so if you feel led to foster, please, we need the homes, and these children need you desperately. But they also need teachers and advocates and friends and adoptive family, community family when I say that, from church, from other children's families, and they deserve the same opportunities that any other child has. So if you feel led to foster, please. Again, I think it's a fantastic thing, but it's also very worthwhile to share your life with these kids and be there for them in any capacity that you can. I still keep in touch with my original, very first CASA case family, and they reach out to me. I save all the pictures they color, and I have a notebook with all the things, and so it means a lot to me, but I know it means a lot to them too. And sometimes just having that one person that the parent can call, the placement can call, the kids can call, just to have that connection, family community connection is so vitally important. And so we just ask that you would support in any way that you can, because it does mean something. You may feel like you're not doing a lot, but your little bit is a lot to somebody.
Wow. Well, thank you all so much for being here with us. And guys, you can't do everything, but you can do something. So let's share how grateful we are for them for doing something.
Well, hey everybody, good to be with you here. It's been a whirlwind. Last night, Saturday through last night, I was in Palm Springs, California, and now I'm in West Texas. And I'm not sure what's going on. Could not be two more different worlds. But my family and I live in College Station, Texas. Some of you immediately just discredited me, and some of you don't care what I have to say from this point on because I'm an Aggie and that's all that you care about. And I heard a whoop over here, so that's probably you. My wife and I live there. We've raised our girls there for the most part. She grew up there. We met at school there. We were banished to Houston for about 15 years doing church planting and got out of the city and got to raise our girls around family. So that's why we live there. And I'll share a little bit of our story. And then my goal really is just to encourage us and to remind you of what you already know, of why we do what we get to do and what a privilege that it is that we get to do it, but also what a tragedy it is that we even have to. And that's kind of the dual reality that we live in. And is it Kirsten? I don't know if you're still in the room. Are you still in the room? Thank you for sharing your perspective tonight. It's super important that we hear from your experience and just a really helpful reframing or just reminder for us that, the journey is difficult on both sides. That imagine how difficult it is to be the one that is brought to a new home and immediately kind of thrust into this world where the people are excited to receive them, but I'm not excited to be here. I don't want any of this to be happening. And so all of us kind of feel that at different points and different measures and in different ways. So what a privilege it is we get to do what we get to do. This is the sorority house that I live in. This is actually an outdated picture. It might be hard for some of you to see. We're actually we're getting new family photos, I am told, this Thanksgiving. And you all know how that goes. It's actually just a complete nightmare. So that's why we haven't done it in so long. But if you were to draw a straight line across the top now, they're all the same heights. They all wear the same clothes. We have a 6-person family group chat of all of us. We have a 5-person family group chat of just the College Station people because our oldest is now in Austin at school. And she doesn't care about, there we go. And she doesn't care about what we're having for dinner that night or whatever, right? There is also now a third 5-person group chat of which I am not a part and it is called the Who Took My group chat. Who took my jeans? Who took my straightener? I want nothing to do with that. Leave me out of it. And so I told them that is not family group chat material. I only want pictures and videos of our dog and conversations about what we're having for dinner that night. The rest is all for you guys. So this is the sorority house I live in. When the girls on the right were 5, 3, and 1, our church plant in Houston was a couple of years old, and my wife came to me and said, now's the perfect time for us to become foster parents. And I thought, actually, no, now is the world's worst time for us to become foster parents. And that ensued an 8-month conversation. A lot of people in our church were starting to get involved in different ways. And about 8 months into these conversations about the concept of time, she came to me and said what I knew to be true. I just didn't want anybody to say to me, especially her. And it was, there's never going to be a right time for us to do this. There is no right time. And even if we do feel like we have arrived at the right time, nobody's crazy enough to then ruin the right time by doing something disruptive or difficult. And so she said, it's just time for us to do it now. And so when they were 6, 4, and 2, we welcomed our first placement into our home. I told God, I'll do whatever you want me to do as long as it's as easy as it can possibly be. Have you ever made that deal with God? And I thought he agreed with me on my terms and my tiny little box of what I'm willing to do, because I said, we've kept 3 girls alive. We know how to do that, seemingly, supposedly. Time will tell. We've got all the girl stuff. Just give us more little girls and we're good to go. And so our very first placement was a 3-day-old baby girl, April 25th, 2012, 7:30 p.m. It was a Wednesday night. And that is the moment that many of you have experienced where the life that we once knew and the world that we once lived in effectively went away. And a whole new life and a whole new world was introduced. One that is far more nuanced and far more complicated. But what we found in bringing this little girl into our home is that she entered us into a world that is far more nuanced and far more difficult, but is one that we otherwise would not have stepped ourselves into. And the gift exchange that happened that night, primarily, we feel like we received. It was far less than us pulling her out of anything, and it was far more her pulling us into something that has become our new reality. And we're grateful for that. And that's a gift that we've received from her. She's actually never left. And so she's the little girl on the left. She's 13 years old now. It's a privilege for us to be her mommy and daddy, but it's also a tragedy that we even have to be. And I really hate that this is her story, honestly, especially now that she's in junior high, mixed race. I mean, junior high, I do care what's going on in your life, so hear me out. I don't care what's going on in your life. At least you can praise God that you are not in 7th and 8th grade anymore. Amen? It's just awful. It was awful 35 years ago. It's doubly awful now, right? I mean, and that's kind of the thing that she's in now, right? Just that sick middle school world with a very different story and a very different identity. And it's a tragedy, but it's also such a joy. right? And so we had other little girls come and go, and I thought, all right, God's on track. He's finally taking my advice and doing the things that I'm suggesting to him. This feels right? And then the table started to turn a little bit. The girls started to get a little bit older. They started to mix in with the age of our girls. And then the train completely left the tracks when we actually started to bring moms with babies into our home. And I don't know what your marriage is like, but here's how mine works. When my wife becomes aware of a situation, that's the equivalent of us having prayed about it and talked about it for a long time. Because in reality, she has had long conversations with me about whatever it might be, just in her head, without my involvement. And then I'm brought in on about the last 20%, okay? And I joke, and at first I thought, that's not how it's supposed to be. But actually, you know what? In 24 years of marriage, it works well. Bring me in too early, I'm gonna complicate it. Bring me in at the end, and I'm gonna figure out how we're gonna get it done, right? And that involves everything from, we're now gonna be bringing moms with babies into our home, to, I no longer like the color of the kitchen, right? She has spent 6 months in her head having 80% of the conversation, and it's now my turn. Let's just figure out how we're gonna get it done, right? And so that's kind of how we work. There was a CASA person up here. I blame you. She was on Facebook late one night. She came across a CASA worker in Dallas advocating for a 17-year-old with a new baby, and was texting me screenshots of the Facebook post from the CASA worker while I'm in some city, I don't remember where I was, telling people, follow Jesus, live the gospel, do hard things. And out of the other side of my mouth, I'm telling my wife, leave me alone, stop texting me. I don't know you. Get off Facebook. I come home to a 17-year-old and a baby living in our house. And yeah, that's them on the right. Our very first experience with this was actually a 23-year-old mom, and the objective here was she just gave birth to newborn twins. She was homeless, living in her car. We became aware of this through some friends of ours at a church that were connected to her, and they ended up leaving the hospital and moving into our house for about a year. And it was eye-opening and totally awful and wonderful all at the same time. And amazing to see our church rally around her and get her set up in an apartment. I was at HEB not long ago, and I'm glad to be in the HEB land, like Southern California. Other people just don't know HEB, right? It's fascinating. I travel around the country, and the two things that people want to know the most about are HEB and Buc-ee's. The rest of the country is just obsessed with things that we have that they don't, and I love it, right? So I actually was at HEB the other day, and I get kind of tackled from behind, and I realized quickly it's a young girl, and I thought, this is highly inappropriate in the day and age in which we live, and I hope nobody's looking at us weird. And I turn around, and I didn't register for a second, and then I glance down, and way down in another aisle, I see Mom, and she's smiling, and the girl that's tackling me is one of the babies in the picture. And I hadn't seen them in probably, a year, and so we ran into them at the grocery store, and it was really great to see them. And then this is Gianna. She moved in when she was 17. Her little baby boy I'm holding is Jordan. He was 1 week old. This is the CASA worker story, and they've been a part of our family. We've been a part of their family. Our families became one about 7 years ago. Gianna is not without her struggles by any means. And you can kind of count the number of struggles with the number of kids that she has currently. When we met her, she had 1, she now has 4. We love Gianna, and we love babies, and we would really love it if Gianna stopped having babies. And if she were here, I would say that to her face, and she would tell you, I say it to her all the time, and it's this ongoing joke, not joke. Like, we're not joking. It would be great if you stopped having babies. She's not without her struggles by any means. By no means is her life buttoned up in a nice, clean bow at all. As a matter of fact, if you were to stack the number of problems that she had when we met her versus the number of problems that she has now, it's a much taller stack. Right? And so if we were graded in a competition on let's find the world's worst foster parents, and it was measured by the outcomes you were or were not able to achieve in a kid's life, we would win the award for the world's worst foster parents. Because when we met you, your struggles were here, and 7 years later of knowing us, they are here. Right? The difference is that she's not alone in them. She calls us mom and dad. She calls our daughters her sisters. We are, for all intents and purposes, the grandparents to her kids. I am JJ. My wife is Emily, so she's Emmy. We are JJ and Emmy to her kiddos, but they are by no means without struggle. She grew up in care since she was 6, and you don't just flip the switch overnight. We told her the night she moved in, whether you like it or not, you're stuck with us forever, and she spent the last 7 years testing that. Oh yeah? Well, what about this? Watch this, right? So we have very clear, strong boundaries with her, and our objective is she has no concept of family, and so we're going to be that for her. And her method of operation that was handed to her against her will was, for really her whole life, your objective is to survive today. There is no tomorrow. You survive today. You manipulate, you lie, you steal, you cheat, you do whatever you have to do to get through today. And for the last 7 years, our hope for her has been to finally relent to the fact that you don't have to do that anymore. And that's not how family operates. And so our boundaries with her have been, whenever it starts to feel like you're playing that game with us, we shut it down immediately, because that's not what family is. And so our hope is that at some point, she just relents to and embraces the fact that she's fully loved and fully cared for. And you don't have to do that anymore. But that's the long journey that we're on with her. So for many of you, regardless of your involvement or the different ways or avenues that you are somehow connected to all of this, and whatever side of the table you're on, our journeys can feel a lot like these kinds of videos, which I love online. Watch this. Okay, perfect. I love it. It says, that was awesome. Seems like a good idea. Nope, not really. Okay, perfect. That's the testimony of a lot of foster parents. People are looking at you getting tumbling down the stairs going, I'm not sure about that. And then we stand up and say, that was awesome. This is my favorite.
It was fun. I enjoyed it. It was definitely a different ballgame, but I had a blast, so thank you. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It was definitely a different ballgame, but I had a blast, so thank you.
Battered and bruised and beat up, whatever side of the aisle you're on, whatever perspective you're coming from, and yet somehow one of the gifts of grace that God gives us is that we're able to say, hey, it's been hard, and it's been difficult, and it's been disruptive, but it's been the best thing ever. And I would do it all over again. I would do it all over again. So here's what I want us to do. One of my favorite books is called The 7 Basic Plots, and it's really a textbook on script writing. So if you were in the script writing world, you would probably have to read this book at some point. And the author of the book outlines what the title says. There are 7 basic plots that most books, movies, stories that we interact with can be categorized within. And some stories pollinate among several of these different plots, but the primary plots we're all going to be familiar with. A few at the bottom, voyage and return. This would be like a ship goes on a journey, encounters some problems, and then struggles to return. We've seen some version of that movie or read that book. Comedy, tragedy, rebirth. Rebirth is like the rebirth of a character. It could be in the beginning, the boss is a jerk, something happens, and by the end of the movie, their character is changed and they're nice and they're loving. The 3 most popular story plots that Hollywood scriptwriters engage with, that most of the books and novels, and we're entering in now to the season, we'll get to this in a minute, where we're all about to start watching 1,000 different versions of the same dumb movie on Lifetime that have nothing to do with Christmas, but they are Christmas movies. And they're all kind of categorized in these 3 primary buckets that most of the movies that we see in theaters can be categorized in. Overcoming the monster, the underdog is victorious. We know the underdog stories, very similar to the underdog story, Rags to Riches. This is from Struggle to Success. Again, we know what those are. And then The Quest. These are a lot of your favorite movies like Wizard of Oz or Star Wars or Indiana Jones or Goonies. They're searching for something. They're trying to go find something. This is The Quest. And this, in the book, the story plot, the 7 basic plots, the author says a couple of things that I think are helpful for us when we think about the stories that we're living. He says the action which the hero or heroine are being drawn into will involve conflict and uncertainty, because without some measure of both of those, there cannot be a story. I'm just going to keep going. Should I grab a handheld? All right. Because without some measure of both, there can't be a story, he basically says, in order to have a good story, you have to have conflict and uncertainty. And then he goes on to say, as they, the characters, face ordeals or come under threat, so we feel tense and apprehensive. If you've read a good book or watched a good movie lately, you actually start to feel it in your body. It's drawn us in. We're fully locked in. Even in extreme cases, so terrified that we can scarcely bear to watch or listen. As the threat is lifted, we can relax. Our own spirits are enlarged. And in a story which is well constructed, these phases of constriction and release, almost like working out a muscle at the gym, and that's how we get stronger, they alternate in a kind of rhythm which provides one of the greatest pleasures that we get from stories. So a boring story is a story where there is no conflict or tension. Nobody wants to watch a story of somebody. Here's a 2-hour movie of somebody's life who was born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and then everything for them was easy, and then they achieved everything that they worked for with zero conflict, zero tension, zero setbacks. End of movie. We walk out of that movie bored and a little annoyed, right? Like, that makes me feel really bad about the life I'm living, right? I don't want to watch that movie. I want to watch a movie about someone who tries to climb a mountain and then gets stuck, right? And because now the question is, how are they going to overcome it, right? And so the whole point of really a good story is to introduce conflict and uncertainty and introduce this constriction and release, that there are moments in the story that are especially tense, that are then punctuated by moments in which there's relief and release. And this is the delicate dance that we're on in any good story, this dance between constriction and release. And so in any good story, very generally, you're going to see the beginning where it starts out character development, and then very quickly, something has to happen that locks us in. You've got to introduce tension at some point, and then you've got to resolve it. We have to have resolution. We're just hardwired to know how things are going to end. My wife and I watched a movie the other night, and the ending was open-ended. It was awful, and said, we just wasted 2 hours of our life. Are they setting us up for a sequel? She said, no, this is actually a remake of an old movie, and it was just infuriating, right? And so I needed to turn on some Shark Tank or something just to give some finality, deal, shake hand, good. There's a conclusion, right? Because this dumb movie we watched, there wasn't one. So here's what's true about all of us at a human level. We have a very low tolerance for uncertainty. We want to know, how will it go? How's this going to go? We have very minimal patience for perpetuity. How long is it going to take? Okay? How long am I signing myself up for? So we need to know not only how long will it go, how will it go, but how long is it going to go? And then we have a high need for closure. Yeah, I'll do that if you tell me how it's going to end. And what we've been introduced to here in this story of kind of walking alongside some of the most vulnerable, and what that exposes in us is really we are in a conflict with all three of these high human needs. How's it going to end? No idea. Probably not the way that you want or expect. Okay? When is it going to end? Probably never, in perpetuity until you die. Wonderful. How's it going to go? Oh, it's going to be just a rabid roller coaster of ups and downs and constriction and release. And you're not going to know one day from the next. Sometimes, fascinating. No thanks, right? Because that grates against every part of how a human is wired. This is what we're introducing people into. This is what we've been introduced into. And so in a few weeks after Thanksgiving, my girls and my wife will make sure that I have resubscribed to all the stations, right? So we can watch this movie, the same version of this movie, over and over again throughout Christmas, and none of them have anything to do with Christmas. So here's the movie. 25-year-old single female goes off to Chicago after growing up in Vermont, and she's become a lawyer in a high-rise. She comes home for the holidays to visit her parents, who are running the bed and breakfast in Vermont that's been in the family for generations. She's an only child, so they have had to make the hard decision that they are selling the bed and breakfast because she will not be there to take care of it because she's off in Chicago being a lawyer. Now we've got tension. Now the story is good, right? Suddenly, in the bed and breakfast, we hear the bell on the door ring, because in my mind, every door in Vermont has a little bell on top of it. And everyone turns and they see a former, now retired Abercrombie model walk in with his flannel shirt. And she immediately recognizes him as the fat, awkward kid from high school who has experienced a rebirth of character, one of the story plots, went off to be a successful model, and has given up that life to move back home to Vermont and is buying the bed and breakfast from her parents. So we now have two problems introduced. One of them has already been solved. The first problem is she wants the bed and breakfast to stay in the family. Well, that problem is solved because she's already decided, I'm marrying the man who's buying the bed and breakfast. The second problem, though, is the one that will carry us through the end of the film, which is she going to go back to Chicago and keep being a lawyer? Is she going to stay in Vermont? Or is she going to have Flannel Boy move to Chicago with her, and they're going to run the bed and breakfast from a distance, right? And we've got to know how the stupid movie ends. And it has nothing to do with Christmas. This is going to be the next 6 weeks of our life in the sorority house that I live in, right? This is every story. So we kind of think that we want our stories to look like this. I think we all know by now that's a boring story and it's an unrealistic one. Nobody wants to live that life. We think we do, but we actually really don't. We also think we want this life, but we know this is unattainable. Like the older we get, the easier it gets. And that's simply not the case. The reality is that this is the life that we're living. This is our story plot. We're not sure what's up or down, backwards or forwards. You'll notice that the ending is being scrubbed out. Hey, when does this thing end? Never, literally, until you die, right? And it might, you don't carry a hearse with you into heaven, but you might carry this. I don't know if like this keeps going on in heaven, but this never ends, right? Because once you've been introduced to it, you can never not know what you know. It's a whole new frame of reference. It's a whole new world that we live in. This is one of my favorite videos illustrating the power of tension. It has no audio, so don't think something's wrong with it. The lack of audio actually, I think, adds to the element of tension. So watch this. All the noises you're making right now are a release of tension. Just so you know. And then he actually ends up being... Man, I've never had anyone clap after that video. You're a tense group of people. So here's the question that every good story, some version of this question, we are quickly introduced to in any good story. And the question is some version of, do they have what it takes, or how will they overcome it, or how's this thing going to end? I have to know. Do they have what it takes? This is the power of a good story. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit for the sake of time. But ultimately, this is a conversation that will be ongoing for you throughout the life of your journey in this space. It's one of those unwelcome companions that can either destroy us or actually strengthen us, depending on the kind of relationship that we have with it. So on the front end of this, if you're considering getting involved, one of the questions that you will be faced with internally in your own self-talk is, do I have what it takes to do this? And let me just go ahead and kind of remove the mystery from you. The answer to the question is no. No, you don't. Okay? Now, the hard thing is, what kind of relationship are you going to have with the answer to that question? And the fear of not having what it takes keeps a lot of good people away from a lot of great kids. Okay? Here's the problem, though. We don't ever get to a point where we've dealt with that question and we move on and never have to deal with it again. Because even 12, 13 years in, I'm confronted with that same question, just in a different version of it. It's no longer, do I have what it takes to get involved in this? It's now, do I have what it takes to keep doing this? Do I have what it takes to even make it through today, or this season, or this particular circumstance? So it's unbelievably important that we have a really good answer to this very powerful question. And this question is not an enemy of ours. It's not an antagonist of ours. It's actually what makes our stories good. Because here's the irony, is that we really, really, really don't like tension in our own stories, but we really, really, really do like tension in other people's stories, okay? Because that's the movie I want to watch and the book I want to read. Tension is a good thing. And confronting this question and having a healthy relationship to the answers to this question are unbelievably important. Let me give you a few examples of how this plays out, and then I want to jump into a couple of passages. These are just examples. It's not exhaustive, but we've all felt some version of these on some level and in varying degrees. It is not exhaustive by any means, just an example. That the fear of not having what it takes becomes this primary driver and ultimately the leverage points depending on what kind of relationship we have with it. So an example could be, I'm afraid, I can't do this because I'm afraid that I would get too attached. Well, here's what I find is that there is the fruit of what we say and think, but then there's the root of what the actual real issue is. There's the top row and then there's the bottom row. I'm convinced the fear of getting too attached actually has nothing to do with attachment at all. It actually has everything to do with, I'm afraid I don't have what it takes to grieve like that. I'm not afraid of attachment, and I'm not afraid of kids. I'm actually afraid of my capacity to grieve when and if I have to let go. I'm afraid of what it might cost. Well, good, I'm glad you're thinking about that. But perhaps it's more, I'm afraid that I don't have what it takes to sacrifice like that. I'm afraid of the effect it might have on my kids. Actually, I don't think you are. I think you're hopeful for the effect that it will have on your kids. I think what you're afraid of is having what it takes to parent your kids through hard things. Especially if you've grown up in the Christian world, where every Christian parenting book basically says, raise them in a bubble. This feels like a threat to that. Oh, you have no idea, man, right? Well, I don't know if I have what it takes to do that. Join the club. Right? But let's not use the scapegoat on the top row as the reason why we can't do certain things when that's not the real issue at all. The real issue isn't external to us. The real issue is internal. Well, I'm afraid that it's not going to go how I want. Well, that's literally like the name of this club. It's not going to go how you want club, right? The only prerequisite is you have to be crazy enough to do it anyway. Well, I'm afraid I don't have what it takes to give up control like that. You're in, right? Join the club. Anybody ever walks in the room and says, you're welcome, I'm here, I've got what it takes, run, right? Because there's something sinister about them, and you don't want to catch what they have. We're all in this together. This is the real battle that we face, this relationship with the fact that we don't have what it takes. And so I'm here tonight simply to encourage you in this. It's a familiar story that maybe when read through a different frame helps us to understand something that is so counterintuitive to the ways that we've been hardwired to think. The story is the feeding of the 5,000. I won't read it word for word, I'll just paraphrase it. Here's how it goes. The disciples recognize that there is a vast need and there's not enough food to meet the need. Their solution is they tell Jesus, hey, we should send them away. Everyone can get something to eat. You can take a break from teaching, and then we can bring them all back. Win-win for everybody. So here's what's happening. Them, much like me, are really good at identifying, hey, there's a big need out there. And our idea is somebody else should meet it, right? Like, let's get it away from us as fast as possible. And so I think they send Peter to tell Jesus, hey man, here's our plan. We don't have enough food. The only logical decision is send them away. They can get something, come back. Jesus says, nah, actually, you guys give them something to eat. And I think Peter's like, dude, I can't go tell them that, right? I mean, they're already annoyed with me, and it's just not going to go well. He's like, you'll be fine. Go tell them. So Peter goes back to the disciples, I think, and says, hey, guys, good news, bad news. What's the good news? Everybody's going to eat. Great. What's the bad news? We have to feed them. Like, dude, we have one job, man. Like, why does Jesus always have to be annoying and like change it up and to just take the easy route, right? So then I think in our children's ministry versions of this story, we've sentimentalized this part of the story. We make it appear as if the disciples go and find some bread and some fish in great anticipation. Like by faith, they go and find bread and fish and bring it to Jesus and are so excited about what's about to happen. I don't think that's what's happening at all. I think they're annoyed, and I think in great angst, they go and find some bread and some fish to prove a point to Jesus. Hey man, we tried to tell you there's not enough. You should have sent them away. Here's literally everything that's here, and point proven. There's not enough. You should have listened to us in the first place. Jesus doesn't say this, but I think says this in his head. Oh, we're going to do a little point proving battle now? All right, watch this. Give me what you got. He multiplies it, everybody eats, and then he does something that's totally unnecessary. He takes it one step further than is necessary, but still, I think, obviously in a holy way, because Jesus never sinned. So I think sometimes it's okay to take things a little further than they need to go in a righteous kind of way, which Jesus does. And everybody eats, and then he makes leftovers. And if he had a mic, he would drop it in front of the guy's face and turn around and walk away. Jesus is totally fine with, oh, you want to do a little point-making battle here? Love it. Totally game. Watch this. And here's what's happening in this story. Jesus puts the disciples in a position where they are forced to be confronted by the fact that they don't have what it takes to do what Jesus is asking them to do. They are very uncomfortable with that. He is not at all. He purposely puts them in that position. And if there hasn't been a moment where you have felt the same on this journey, then watch out, it's coming. When you look out at the landscape of what Jesus has put in front of you, and your immediate thought is, I don't have what it takes to do this. We are hardwired to think that that is indicative that there is a problem, and you are doing it wrong, and you probably should never have done it in the first place. But what we actually see to be true in the economy of the kingdom of God is Jesus says, no. Being confronted with the fact that you don't have what it takes is not a position of weakness. It's actually a place of great power, because that's where you actually start to key in on the fact that my expectation of you is not that you have what it takes, but that you be willing to give me what little you've got, and you trust that I can multiply it far beyond anything that you could ever do on your own. That's the expectation. That's the expectation that God has on us. Not having what it takes does not disqualify us from being used by God. As a matter of fact, I think in the kingdom of God, it's one of the things that qualifies us the most. And so I wish we had hours to walk through others' examples in Scripture of the ways that the gospel communicates truth that is so counterintuitive, that requires our reframing of the way that we think and process through certain experiences that we're walking through. But I think this is by far the anchor of all of them. That we have a good, working, gospel-centered, healthy relationship with the fact that we don't have what it takes to do what Jesus has asked us to do, and that is a position of great power. And all that he expects of us is to offer what little emotion, what little love, what little energy, what little Karen Purvis voice in our head, TBRI training. Karen, I've tried everything, and Karen's in the grave, and we can talk to Karen in the grave. I think it's okay. Like, Karen, I've tried to connect before I correct, and it's not working, right? And in her sweet voice, if you ever heard her talk, she would just encourage you like a sweet grandma, right? Just keep giving what little you've got, and trust that Jesus is multiplying it exponentially far beyond anything that you could ever produce on your own. Amen? Let me pray for us, and then I'm going to invite them up to close us out for the night. So, Father, I do ask that by your Holy Spirit, you would energize us, you would encourage us, you would inspire us, that for those who entered into this place maybe feeling weary and empty and dry, that you give them the opportunity to look around and see that they are surrounded by a community of people that are in it with them, and that you are walking with them and encouraging them, and that even the hard things are not final things, they're not wrong things, that engaging in hard things probably means they're doing something very right. And I just pray that you would lift our eyes, lift our hearts, lift our heads to help us see what a privilege it is to participate with you in the renewal of all things. It's not an easy life, but man, it's such a great story that we get to live. And we're so grateful that you've allowed us to be a part of it. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Encouragement. I don't know how many times that runs through your heads, but it runs through mine all the time. Do we have what it takes? Thanks, Jason, for that reminder and encouragement. All right. So there's some options on there, and I'll walk you briefly through some of those. What we at Open Homes are trying to do is create a partnership of churches to make this difference, right? Well, one of the simple things is to get information out, just slides, etc. So if you at your church would like to become a partner, you can click that. If you'd like to start a foster care ministry, we've got four churches right now in town that we're working with that are starting or have started foster care ministries. We'd love that. What was the previous one? I missed one. Or become a foster parent. You can click that on. We love to come alongside parents. We like to plug in potential parents with a mentor so that you've got somebody that can walk along with you through the whole process. All right, next one. You can support us financially. We would love that. One of the things that we're looking for is some sponsors for the podcast itself. Right, doing the podcast, we would love to have an organization or individuals that could just help us continue to share stories. But it does take some time and finances to make that happen. The other thing we can do, or another thing we can do, is offer wraparound support and teach you and train your church to do those things. And then one other thing, the idea of business impact. One of the things that I love that Patrick, if you have not met Patrick, he has something called the San Angelo Family Network. He deals with kinship families. But he's working with local businesses to create basically like one of those discount cards, right? And so if you are a foster adoptive parent or if you're a kinship family, then if like a business could say, we want to give 20% breaks to them. Or you could be somebody that just says, hey, I've got a lawn care business and I would love to cut grass for families. There's been a number of times where we just haven't been able to get to it for weeks. Little things like that. If you can think of something for your business, we would love to see that. And then just other offerings. If you just go, hey, nothing was mentioned, but I could do this, put that on there. If y'all would fill out that form, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it.